215. No, I'm just joking. Hey, if you didn't get that, don't worry about it. It's a old YouTube channel that I think has been taken down with a very inappropriate adult Muppet from Philadelphia. That show used to be kind of hilarious. Funny thing is, it was actually introduced to me by a Korean friend. But in any case, so yesterday I did a live stream, and it was a vertical live stream, so I did not mean it to go so long, but it ended up going 4 hours long. Um, the nature of the topic was asking me philosophical questions, and I think at least a good hour of it had nothing to do with philosophical questions, but I entertained questions nevertheless. But many of the would-be philosophical questions was more about religious and existential questions. Existential questions are philosophy, but I was hoping for things more in my genuine, well, my general field of interest, which was more philosophy qua philosophy type stuff. At least I should say philosophy qua analytic philosophy, which was more dealing with things like epistemology and metaphysics and philosophy of mind, maybe philosophy of language, logic, semantics, stuff like that. But it didn't go that way. That's fine. But um, I did get, like I said, a lot of spiritual and religious and existential questions. So this live stream is going to be just about that. Hopefully, I can get Mrs. Contrarian on board to moderate again to help me to hear. So, for the folks just jumping into the live stream, again, this is going to be just about um, asking me like religious questions, because since so many of the questions yesterday, when I wanted it to be just about philosophy, ended up being about religious and metaphysical type things, we're just going to do a whole well, a whole segment just on that. I don't know, just saying salty flicks. I don't know what that means, but bear in mind, I will be kicking people out the chat or timing them out if they say stupid stuff. Not saying that what you're saying is stupid, but that's for everyone to be forewarned. I want to keep this kind of geared towards relevant stuff, right? So, and I know I look a little bit rough. I was working out earlier. Have not fixed myself up yet. But yeah, this is gonna be just about religious stuff. Specifically, I'm gonna advocate for being non-religious. But if I only get trolling type stuff, then we'll end it because I have better stuff to do. So my so for my own viewpoint, like I said, I'm atheist, and even though I didn't want that to be about the gist of what I was doing yesterday, ended up being a big part of it, discussing what it was, how it's relevant, and all that sort of stuff. So let's have it out here. Let's have it out about atheism or skepticism, non-religious beliefs, all that sort of stuff. So, but like I said, if it's just gonna be trolling type stuff, we can end this early because it's already kind of past my bedtime. So again, I'm atheist. I think more black people need to be atheists because I think churches in the black community are exploitative. That's not the reason I'm atheist. I'm just saying that that would be a reason, that would be a benefit of more black people being atheists. They'd be less exploited by these churches. These churches come into these communities, these low income communities, A lot of people donate their hard-earned cash to these churches, and then that money, most of that money, is not even recycled back into the community. It goes to these suburban communities where the pastors and preachers and deacons live. They don't live in the hood. Thanks, James. I hope I make it rewarding. Like I said, this chat is about religious and existential questions, so people can ask me any sort of religious and existential questions. I'll try to answer it, and I'm gonna kind of put forth my own views on why I think people should be less religious. But I will be kicking some of these trolls out if they can't, control themselves. Hi, my name is period. Why don't I believe? Simply because I don't find any evidence to believe in, to have any theistic beliefs. Um, I think it's partly neurobiological too, because I know that religiosity is part of the human experience, but I think some people are born a little bit. I don't want to say born more logical, but I think some folks have a tendency to be more skeptical. Like as a kid, I never believed in Santa Claus, and I thought kids who did believe in Santa Claus were goofy. During Christmas time, I would go into my parents' room and look for my Christmas gifts and find most of them. So I knew what I was getting on Christmas Day, and I was still excited about it because I knew what I was getting. And I'd be pleasantly surprised to find stuff that I didn't find already in their bedroom. And then later along, I was, I guess, what you could call a deist um, throughout most of middle and high school. Deists are people who do believe in God, but they don't believe he's actually like manifest or imminent in the world. They think he's sort of like hands off with the world the way a clockmaker is with a clock or watch. Like he creates it, sets it so that it can wind up and go on its own, telling the time that he steps back and let it do its thing. So that was the deist approach. And with most atheists, there's an old joke that a deist is someone who just hasn't been old enough to become an atheist yet. And that was definitely my case because by the time I became 19 and 20, I definitely made that switch from deist to atheism. Um, Kaimon Chasen says, "What part of the world you from, guy?" I'm from Maryland in the United States. Lou Sassel said, "That's because you got a pack of Newports for Christmas." Yeah, I never smoked cigarettes, my friend. That's why I'm still in shape in my 40s and run 10 kilometers every day. What do you do? Beyond that, uh, I got toys and stuff for Christmas, like most middle class children. Um, and I was in the 80s, so we got the best toys: GI Joes, Transformers, He-Man, Star Wars, Legos, um, the superhero stuff, whether it was the Superpowers collection from Kenner or the Toy Biz, Batman, and superhero stuff, and then all of that good stuff. Rope, everything good from the 80s I had, unless I didn't want it. I'm not looking at your profile pic. I'm on a live stream. I'm not going to go to your account to look at your picture, and I really wouldn't care. Besides that, like I said, I run 10 kilometers every day. I do Muay Thai. I've been doing martial arts since I was 7, so I'm more fit than anyone. Any case, hi, my name is says, so do you think we are here by pure chance? Yeah. Um, it's been a bunch of both historical and evolutionary accidents that led to life on Earth. Um, when we look at fundamental physics, we know that it's all ruled by the laws of probability. So yeah, there's nothing saying that we we were guaranteed this outcome. If there was but if there was but one change in the historical chain of events, we wouldn't be here. During that little bottleneck in in East Africa, where most of modern humans had died off, if it wasn't for that sliver of people whom survived and ended up migrating out of Africa, we wouldn't be here. No humans would be here now. So yeah, it's by chance. Most things are by chance, which is a good reason why people should get a good background in probability and statistics, because laws of probability govern the universe. So uninvolved big time says there's no way to know why we are here or how we got here. Depends on what you mean by why and how, but I mean, you might be right. Like I said, there's been a bunch of historical accidents that led to modern humans, and there was by no means any guarantee that it would have ended up the way it did if not for all these certain things to happen. The primal to all of these would probably be the laws of physics, and built upon those other emergent scientific laws. So yeah, DJ class says, so you had decent upbringing? Yeah, for more or less, yeah. I think a typical, 80s kid. I wasn't the best kid, but I was not a bad kid either. I wasn't getting into trouble and going to juvie or anything like that. Like, I rode my bike, I played Nintendo, uh, messed with my little Tandy computer. Remember the Tandy computers from Radio Shack? Um, you know, did normal stuff like that, watched my cartoons, the normal thing. Then I did a bunch of nerdy stuff too as well, but that's a different subject. Lo Cecil says, I think it makes a lot less sense to think something came from nothing rather than thinking of a God made the universe. It depends on what you mean by nothing, though. See, that's one of the great things about philosophy is that we can break down what nothing is. There's different versions of nothing, even within physics. You might have like space is like outer space is mostly empty, mostly. But there are virtual particles that come in and out of existence, and there's a debate amongst physicists whether these virtual particles are just mathematical entities to get along with the equations, or that we should say that these mathematical constructs actually represent reality, and that the fabric of space-time has virtual particles that are real things that come in and out of existence. um but I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of armchair cosmogony, but if you guys want to look it up, there's more than enough books on that. Like, there's a there's a book called The Big Bang that I read um, for an astronomy class on cosmology, um, cosmogony and cosmology. Excuse me. Cosmogony is a field within um, astronomy or astrophysics that deals with a particular part of cosmology. So cosmology is con- con- um, concerned with the structure and the origins of the universe. Cosmogony is the part of that cosmology specifically studying the origins of the universe. So that's cosmogony. And in any case, we There's a textbook written just about the first 3 minutes of the universe. There's an entire textbook just on the first 3 minutes of the universe. So we have a whole lot of more explanation of the origins of the universe than from science than we get from religion. Like, to say to give a supernatural explanation of something is no explanation at all, because it gives us no mechanism by which we can say that this or that happened. As the example I gave yesterday in a live stream, if someone was asking you how to program their their TV so they can get whatever shows they want to see, and you just told them to pray about it, that's not a fucking explanation, is it? No, it's not. We tell them how to program how to use the remote to set it to record their favorite programs and so forth. We give them a natural explanation of it because we actually understand it. You only give supernatural explanations to things you don't understand, which means you don't know. Oh, here we go. Muay Thai is okay. BJJ is better. I'm not getting into that debate. We can do that in another live stream. For me, I, yeah, I will get into it because trust me, DJ Clash. If we talk about that, it's gonna end up. I'm gonna end up talking about that the whole stream. Let's save that for another. Uh, we can save that for another video. Okay, trust me. I'm fighting the urge to respond to that. So hi, my name is okay. With that answer, do you believe extraterrestrial life? Um, I'm skeptical of it. It was funny. I remember when I was in the army, and I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm atheist and a naturalist," and they was like, "Well, so you probably believe in extraterrestrial life, then, right?" I'm like, "No." I said, well, "How does that follow?" So I guess they thought if I don't believe in one unexplainable thing, that I must believe in another unexplainable thing. I was like, "No." As someone who's a science a scientific minded person, I don't believe in anything without supporting evidence. There's no supporting evidence for extraterrestrial life yet. And if we do find extraterrestrial life, there's no guarantees that it's going to be sentient life. Like, I think when most people say extraterrestrial life, I think the assumption behind that is that this is going to be intelligent life or sentient life. And there's no guarantees. More than likely, if we find extraterrestrial life, it's going to be microbial. For most of the history of life on Earth, most of life on Earth was single celled organisms, starting back 3.8 billion years ago when we had the first origins of life on Earth. For most of that time, up until several hundred million something years ago, um, it was mostly um, single cell or unicellular life, up until there being this explosion of life in the seas of multicellular organisms. And most of those went extinct because there's been 5 mass extinctions on the face of the earth. Most people only know of the dinosaur extinction, the Jurassic extinction. There's been 5 mass extinctions on the earth, and currently scientists are thinking that we're in the midst of a 6th extinction right now, which is mostly human caused. But yeah, I don't. So yeah, to answer the question, I'm extremely skeptical of extraterrestrial life. Um, and if there is, we may not yet have the instruments to find it. DJ Class said this man taught cap. What was I capping about? We were talking about the Muay Thai versus BJJ stuff, or are you talking about as far as the extraterrestrial life stuff? I don't know where I lost you, but like I said, on another string, we can definitely have it out about the better martial arts as far as combat sports are concerned. If people like BJJ, that's cool, but I like Muay Thai because I think it's realistic for most street situations. I'm sorry, I'm in Baltimore. I'm just not going to the ground. I'm not going to be pulling half guard in Park Heights, Baltimore. So, yeah. Lou Sasso says it's more logical to believe in God than to say everything just happened. No, it's not. It's not logical because to be logical, it has to follow from premises that guarantee the outcome of the conclusion. Logical or logically valid argument or inference means that the premises the premises guarantees the conclusion, and there's no I've seen every major argument for God, because we all get that stuff in like philosophy 101. Not to mention I also took the philosophy of religion, and there's no there's been no lot all the different logical proofs for God, they're all invalid. The most the strongest ones have only been conceptually valid, which is a low bar. You don't want an argument just to have conceptual validity, because all that is saying is that it's conceptual to believe this thing exists. No, but that was never there was never any argument there. No one ever denied that it was conceivable to believe that. That was an argument. The argument was, would it be otherwise illogical to believe that thing uh, doesn't exist? And none of those proofs does that. They all fall short of doing it. They're all like semantically invalid, meaning the content of the arguments themselves aren't necessitated by the premises. They're not valid. Yesterday in the live stream, I gave one of the strongest arguments that they have for God, and that fell way short. That was Alvin Platinga's argument for the God being a properly basic belief. I'm not gonna go over that again unless someone asks me to, but they're, you can't get logical proofs. Then the empirical evidence isn't there, and then you have other types of quasi empirical arguments, and those have fell short as well. So you it's only logical to people who already believe it. If if the arguments don't work on someone who doesn't already believe it, then they're not good arguments. Robert Nahashner, sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Rob. But what if you were a guy in a past life and got bored and created this new world and put yourself here as a human as a challenge to yourself? Well, Gedanken experiment. Well, that I mean, first of all, that's just an intuition pump and not a really good one. Um, an intuition pump, for those who don't know, is sort of like a thought experiment, but not like a really thorough one. It's like just one. It's usually just like a what if sort of scenario. These what ifs or hypothetical scenarios are some are better than others, but this one isn't a really good one because it had for this to be fleshed out, it has to have so many other assumptions answered. Like, if I were God in a past life, then what sort of God would I be? Am I the Judeo-Christian God who's omnipotent, omniscient, uh, beneficent, um, and all these other omni traits of the Judeo-Christian God, which are kind of patently absurd, but or am I just one of the lesser gods of the pantheons of from other religious um, doctrines of the past, like Zeus or Osiris, Quetzalcoatl, um, Hote? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, the bias here is is the assumption of what this God is. Like, I'm assuming we're talking about some sort of psychological being here, but are we talking about the Judeo-Christian God? Because not everyone accepts that. You see why it gets ridiculous here. Because one of the strengths of atheism is showing that everyone's atheist who's already religious, because to believe your particular religious doctrine, whether you're Catholic, Lutheran, Anabaptist, Methodist, Jesuit, Mormon, and the list can go on, whether you're any of these particular faiths, it means necessarily that you reject all the other ones. You're atheist towards all the other thousands of religions that have been on the globe for thousands of years. The atheist just takes that one last step and says, "Well, so is yours." Yours is also rejected. But that's that's why it's more reasonable just to be atheist. Rob says this is a simulation. Um, I get that it's a simulation. Like I said, I understand you're given a thought experiment, but it's not very well fleshed out. So the problem is you already have an assumption of what type of God you're talking about, and I don't know what sort of God you are referring to. If you want me to assume that you're talking about a Judeo-Christian God, then say that. But otherwise, like I said, there's literally millions of different gods that have been conceptualized by humans within the last 6,000 years. So you're gonna have to flesh that out. Are we talking about Gozer the Gozerian? In that case, I'm gonna call the Ghostbusters. But which God are we talking about? Are we talking about Jesus, Yahweh, Allah, Quetzalcoatl, Gozer, Zeus, Osiris? Whom are we talking about? Like, so. So do you believe we are the only intelligent life in the universe? Yes, more than likely. Well, I'll say this: within the observable universe, there's no evidence that there's other intelligent life. See that the problem with like I said, people talking about extraterrestrial life and alien life is that there's this bias that the end result of evolution is intelligence, and it's not. Intelligence is just one of many adaptive traits that a species can acquire to make them more um, fit for their environment. For us, it was intelligence. There's animals that can do things that we can't do. The Tunisian desert ant can do innate vector algebra. So within the Tunisian desert, these desert ants can look around this desert, which has no discernible differences in any direction they look, but be able to innately plot an azimuth from the point that they started out from to the sun, which means they also have to be able to have a conceptualization of whatever it is up in the sky that they project the azimuth from, and use that from any destination that they go to get there and get back home. We can't do something like that. I mean, we can do the math, but not innately like they can. Um, there are whales that can navigate the oceans by being able to track the Earth's um, geo geo magnetic uh, stuff. So, and I can go into so many other things. Like there's animals that can do amazing other things. The the honeybee, how they can find their way to different sources of food, um, to navigate the spatial navigational skills of these honey ants, and then they come back to the hive and they do this thing called a waggle dance, where they do this dance to actually show to tell the other bees how to get to the food source that they just found. Like and I can keep going, but intelligence is only one of many adaptive mechanisms that a species can acquire to make them more fit to their environment. But it's not the end result of evolution, because every animal that currently exists are the best at what they do. Duolingo Bird says, "Yo, what's up?" Um, James says, "Good luck, nice meeting you. Thanks." Duolingo Bird says, "Do you study Aristotle?" I mean, not specifically, but I took ancient philosophy, which I enjoyed a lot. Of the three Socratic philosophers, he's not my favorite. My favorite would probably be Plato, because Plato covered almost every breadth of knowledge that we still talk about today. Like, we commonly say, there was a, a philosopher who was who wrote a book with Bertrand Russell, Alfred North Whitehead, who said that all of he basically said all of Western philosophy is a footnote to Plato, which is kind of true, because most of the things we still discuss within philosophy, and even like science and other parts of Western civilization, have all been can all harken back into discussions that Plato's had like 4,000 years ago. So he's my favorite of the three Socratic philosophers. But of course, I like Aristotle as well. He pretty much gave us our different scientific classifications. He gave us ancient logic. Uh, so, but the problem with Aristotle, well, not the problem with Aristotle, but the problem with thinking about Aristotle was that uh, it became his way of thinking sort of became the only way you could do you the only way scholars could think about academia, all the way up until like the time of the Renaissance. And so modern science came about by the overthrow of Aristotelianism, because what was once a fluid way of thinking about things, as far as his own metaphysics and ethics and logic and epistemology went, it became, during the medieval Europe, it just became dogma. So Sammy Day is praising his God, more than free to do so. Eric de Guapo says, "Pray about it without some guidance. It's just being dismissive." Zeke Rowan says, "Nah, Muay Thai all day." Yes, I agree with you, brother. TJ TJ's Rex. That's don't be mean to the guy. I mean, if he wants to, if he's religiously inspired to say Allah Akbar, it's all good. Let everyone have their beliefs, as long as it's not as long as they're not being rude to other folks. I'm all for it. So that's mean, saying Aldi fruit bar. It's kind of funny, but that's mean. That's mean. Eric de Guapo says, "I believe there's some kind of bacteria living on the caps of Mars." Maybe we, I mean, we still have those drones up there that, I mean, not the drones, the what's the little robotic vehicles up there that's still drilling and stuff like that. So far, so far um they have found carbon molecules that give hints that there could be some sort of microscopic life on Mars, but they haven't brung back anything um, concrete yet. Because believe me, once they do, it's going to be all over the news that that NASA has brought back signs of life from Mars. It's going to be all over the news, all in the papers, if people still read newspapers, that is. But it's going to be all over the news. Someone's probably going to win a Nobel. Well, not someone. It's probably going to be a whole team of whoever is, did led the experiment to find it. They're going to probably get a Nobel Prize for discovering life on another planet Trust me, it will. When we get concrete proof, it's going to be big. Whoever whoever is involved in that discovery is going to be instantly famous, and their name is going to be as well known as like Stephen Hawking or Einstein. So Lou Sasso says believe in God can just mean a higher power that created the universe. It doesn't mean a man in the sky. I don't think God the Father is physical. I think Jesus was, but that's just me being Catholic. So again, not knocking your faith, Lou. I definitely don't want to do that. So here's the thing. That's why I was telling the other guy, you guys specify when he was trying to give a thought experiment about what if you were God in a past life and created this new universe because you were bored and such and such. And first of all, it was just a weird thought experiment, but that wasn't my main problem with it. My main problem with it was he didn't flesh out what he meant by God, because that can mean so many different things to so many different people, and that's actually one of the reasons to not believe is that people. And this was, and by the way, this was pointed out by a Catholic philosopher back in medieval Europe, Saint Thomas Aquinas. I think it was Thomas Aquinas. If not Aquinas, it was the other guy. Can't remember, but I think it was Saint Thomas Aquinas. So a lot of these scholastic philosophers, philosophers in medieval Europe, they were also they were also members of the church, because back then during the Middle Ages, after the fall of Rome, the only educated people were really either the nobles or people of the church. That's the only people who received education. Maybe and maybe some very wealthy merchants, but the majority of people in Europe were uneducated. Most most of most of higher education was preserved actually in the Middle East during the Middle Ages. The Islamic universities were the ones who kept alive basically the knowledge from ancient Greece and Rome, while medieval Europe fell into disarray. So St. Thomas Aquinas, I believe it was him, said that you can't you can't use the God you can't use the term God to just to refer to anything and then it be true. He said, you know, he was saying that wasn't logical. So, um, and all of that is just to say that when we say God, it can mean different things. Like, presumably, when most people say it, they mean some sort of psychological being. It may not necessarily be the Judeo Christian Islamic God, but they usually are referring to a psychological being. But if someone wanted to say that God is love, okay, sure. But there are also other ways that people have had envisioned what God is. Like they are pantheists, like Baruch Spinoza, the the Jewish philosopher who was excommunicated from the church for his beliefs in pantheism. Pantheism is the belief that God is nature, and because of that belief, they basically thought he was an atheist, and they excommunicated him from the church, which is interesting. Like I said, because he was actually a man. Originally, he was a Jewish man, but he was of the Catholic faith. And then there's another version of pantheism called panentheism, which means that God isn't just nature, but is the governing force behind nature, which is sort of similar to like Eastern philosophy beliefs that that believe in a higher power, not as God, but as some sort of governing force of nature, which you might call the Tao. So you might see this in things like Taoism and Confucianism and some forms of Buddhism, where they don't have any belief in a God as a psychological being, but of there being some sort of governing force that controls all aspects of nature, sort of like the Force in Star Wars. But if you were to say that, hey, I just believe that there's a higher power, it again, then it kind of comes down to, what do you mean by higher power? Do you mean a psychological being, or do you just mean some sort of force of nature? Because some people might agree with you on both sides of that. For my own, I would say, the thing that the governing force behind all aspects of nature are just the laws of physics, right? So, Elders Vault said, yo, Contrarian, what's up? Here from Australia. What's up, Elders Vault? What part of Australia you're from? Just Lou Cecil says, to say something can be created from nothing is not logical. Again, you have to realize there's different definitions of nothing. Are we talking about nothing as a absolute vacuum? And trust me, in anything, religion itself teaches something came from nothing. Genesis itself says that when it talks about the creation. So did the ancient Greeks. They believe they believe everything came from nothing, but for them, nothing was itself a primordial God. They actually conceptualized the absolute vacuum, or the nothingness, as a primordial God. Chaos. Chaos was the primordial God from which all the other primordial deities came from. Gaia, Earth, and Nyx, the night, and Erebus, the I think Erebus is like darkness of the night, and Eros, love, and Gaia bore children, um just just by herself, like without sex. She bore several other primordial gods like Uranus, who became her consort. Uranus, which was the sky, and then her and Uranus had other children, which like Tartarus, which became the underside of Gaia, or the Earth. And almost every other religion talks about something coming from nothing. So to say that it's not logical kind of betrays your religious beliefs, because both in Christian mythos and in most other religious mythos, there is something that came from nothing. Besides that, something can come from nothing when we're talking about it as far as physical science, because in physics, the an absolute vacuum is a unstable state that can't last. And it's said that the Big Bang came out of the quantum fluctuations of the uh, of the universe, when there was nothing, because nothing itself is unstable. And from that, these quantum fluctuations led to a spark. We say that the um, the cosmic inflation was the bang and the Big Bang. The cosmic inflation started from quantum fluctuations and the absolute vacuum of space. Well, not of space, because there was no space before then, but the within the absolute vacuum, these quantum fluctuations led to a spark, which gave us cosmic inflation, which is the bang and the Big Bang of Big Bang theory, which is called the inflationary Big Bang model, as opposed to the standard Big Bang model that doesn't include cosmic inflation. But it's not at all illogical to think this something came from nothing, because it's actually predicted through mathematical equations. It doesn't get more logical than that. And again, ancient religions themselves also say that something came from nothing. It's not illogical at all. Whether it's hard, it 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 can be hard to conceive, yes, but that doesn't make it illogical. That's why you have to separate what's logical from what's merely conceivable. So Eric Guapa says Muay Thai versus BJJ was settled with the fight between Mighty Mouse and Rod Tang versus Rod Tang. No, it wasn't. One fight doesn't settle something. But again, that's for a different video. And also, I'll say this: it depends on whose rules we're playing by. Like a, a certain style is going to be favored depending on the rules that are played upon. If certain rules favor grappling, like UFC did in the early 90s, then grapplers are going to be supreme. If a or if certain sport rules favor striking, then strikers are going to be supreme. It's always going to be subjective because the rules the rules will dictate who has the better end of it. What I'm saying is, when it comes to a street fight, if I'm if I'm in a I'm not in the dirty roads of Brazil. I live on the I've lived on the streets of Philly and Baltimore. I'm not going to the ground. And most people in the city have weapons. BJJ does not teach you how to deal with weapons. And it doesn't teach you how to deal with multiple attackers. It teaches how to go one on one with someone, which is great. But the fact that I'm more than likely going to encounter someone with a weapon, I want to know how to strike and deal with people who have knives and guns. Anyway, the transcendental argument for God is not undefeated. Is another invalid argument. I know the transcendental arguments for God. Again, I literally went through all the all the religious arguments in my philosophy of religion class many eons ago. None of them stand up. The best ones you, like I said, the best you can argue is some sort of argument from design and basically just say, um, I'm sorry, not the best. The best you can do is some sort of cosmological argument, which to say there's that God is just the ultimate cause of everything. And even if that's the case, one that still doesn't give you the Christian God. That's number one. And number two, it doesn't have to be a God at all. Again, that can just be the laws of physics. So the cosmological argument doesn't get you what you want, but that's the best that you're going to get out of all those sort of logical proofs for God. All those other arguments can do at best could be give you some sort of conceptual validity to the argument, but conceptual validity was never what was in question in the first place. It wasn't is this conceivable, is whether this logical proof can guarantee the truth of this conclusion, and none of those arguments can. Logic and proof are not the same. A proof is a oh boy. So we should be careful what we're talking about when we're saying logic. When I say logic, I'm using it in a very in the formal sense of it. People abuse the word logic, and like you've used it a few times in the in the string to just mean sensible or rational. Logic, capital L, doesn't is a form is the study of forms of reasoning, both formal and informal reasoning. A proof is a proof is a method of doing logic. You have different sorts of proofs. Um, so I don't understand what that confusion is. I never equated logic and proof. Being that my background is in philosophy, we are very pedantic about how we use words. So I'm very careful in what I'm saying. If anything, I try to dumb down what I'm saying because I know if I use too much jargon, I'm going to lose people. What are the laws of logic? There are several. I mean, what do you mean specifically? Like the laws of there's a lot of laws of logic. um, whether you're talking about the law of non-contradiction, which is one of the most basic laws, the law of identity, um, the law of the excluded middle, um, the principles of reasoning, and there's other laws. So I'm not sure what you're asking about. I think the most fundamental law of logic might be the by the law, the principle or law of bivalence, which all the other laws of logic presuppose the truth of the bivalence of logic. I mean the principle of bivalence, which is kind of presupposed by the very notion of truth itself. So those those are some of the most fundamental laws of logic, if that's what you're asking. The, the, the law of bivalence, the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle, and the principles of reasoning. Eric DeGuavo says the law of logic number one, if I don't like it, doesn't exist. Okay. Gracelyn Thomas says, hey, what's up? What's up, Gracelyn? How are you? We are living magic, the one true God. Who's that? Thor? So, I mean, well, it's Monday. So we're celebrating the moon today. It's funny that in a Christian society, all the days of the week are named after pagan gods. So from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we have the Norse gods, and Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday we have the Roman gods, but whatever. Eric Guap says where atheism falls apart for me is the subjective morality. So again, so that's a good comment, Eric. So I want to tease that apart because I actually see this being a viewpoint of people saying that the fall of society is when people are atheists and non-religious because then they just become nihilists. It's not true. You have to understand ethics precedes organized religion. At least most, well, it precedes most organized religions. Like ethics pre predates Christianity, Judaism, all of them, because when philosophy was established, like as I said in the live stream yesterday, what philosophy separated itself from religion by trying to answer questions about nature without without um, without going back to looking at it through some sort of religious or supernatural perspective. Instead, looking at it from a natural perspective, like what sort of mechanisms do we have to say that the Earth goes around the sun, or at least back then they thought the sun goes around the Earth, but whatever. But in any case, they looked at natural ways to look at that, and when it came to ethics, how should people treat each other? And ethics came about by rejecting the divine command theory. The divine command theory says that what's moral is what God or the gods command, or conversely, um, whatever is moral is commanded by the gods. And Socrates tore this apart 4,000 years ago, and that set the stage for moralities. Like, yes, there are a lot of atheists that believe in moral relativism, and there is a strong argument for moral relativism, but you don't have to believe in moral relativism to be an atheist, and vice versa. You don't have to be a relative. You don't have to be a person who believes in relative moralism and be atheist. They are not overlapping. Also, I mean, for my part, yes, I do believe that most of morality is relative, but I don't think all of it is because, as I also discussed in the live stream yesterday, We know that there are innate moral principles that all people are born with. And we know this because of every human society that has been studied, both um, modern societies and um, more primitive type societies that still exist. We we have found that every human society has the same moral taboos. We have the same moral taboos against murder, rape, incest, theft, dishonesty, cheating, and so forth. Now, they may be now how these may be defined within each society may be a little bit different, but every society has these moral taboos because there's something that we are born innately to understand about moral behavior. This is something we know from moral psychology. Um, so atheism doesn't lead to subjective morality. If anything, it may lead to a more appreciation of how to treat your fellow man. A lot of atheists are actually subscribed to humanism. Um, and let's not forget that it's been religious people who have gave us the worst human atrocities ever on the face of the earth. It's been religious people, not atheists. So there's always someone that says "Hail Satan." But in any case, all right, let me skip some of these goofy comments. Eric de Guapo says the church was the center for education for a very long time. Yeah, our current college and university system was birthed by the monasteries, the monasteries. Mm, yeah, I mean, well, a lot of a lot of colleges were religious institutions, but the first university was founded by Plato called the Academy. In it, he taught um, they were taught things like um, mathematics, like predominantly geometry, of ethics, metaphysics, music, gymnastics, stuff like that. Like Plato formed the first university as we know them to be now. So and but like I said, after the fall of Rome, education was in in Europe was mostly through through the church. So people who were educated were more than likely members of the Catholic Church, or they were nobles you know, who were given educations through these same folks, or wealthy merchants. Um, Whereas back in the Middle East and North Africa, um, education still survived, and you had some secular institutions in in the, um, in the North in North Africa and the Middle East. But yeah, by far the majority of education was done in the churches, whether the Islamic scholars of the Middle East or the Catholic scholars of Europe. Um, Not, but that also, but then there's also education was going on in the Hindu kingdoms of India and the early dynasties of China. So, because they invented writing independently of the writing that was developed in the Middle East, which was the first place writing developed in ancient Samaria. Then the Chinese independently invented their own writings later on. So, anyway, and who set the laws of physics? Mathematics did. You keep saying who. The when you say who, there's the assumption that there's the assumption that there has to be someone who did it. Mind you, that's not. I get, I get why you think that, but it's wrong-headed because you're assuming that there has to be an intentional being behind that. They are random. They are random machinations that happen in nature all the time that no one has done. This can just be another instance of that. There's no one asks who set some. Well, I don't want to go into that, but yeah. Robos Plex says, Rob C. Plex says, dude, don't shout out Greek gods like they're your homies. I'm not. Um, I don't know where you came into the chat, but you probably missed the point of that, so I'm not going to go over that. That's your misunderstanding, not mine. Merrill Miller says, Egypt, old religion is the start of it all. No, I don't think religion started in Egypt since it probably started in, like I said, the oldest civilization we know is Sumeria. That came out of all the Mesopotamian civilizations, and I would assume that religion started there as well. What I can say is, and I said this also in the live stream yesterday, I wish a lot of you guys had participated in the live stream yesterday so you can see how this crosses over with what I said then. But if you get a chance, I have uploaded it so you can check it out. I warn you, it's 4 hours long, but a lot of the stuff I'm talking about today is sort of a sequel to the stuff that I talked about yesterday. So what I would say is, no, I believe religion started with the first civilizations, and as far as we know, the first civilization was Sumeria 6,000 years ago. But in Egypt, we got the first monotheistic religion. The pharaoh Akhenaten was the first one to conceive of of there just being one God instead of there being a polytheistic system. But after he died, he was considered a heretic, and all his beliefs and writings and hieroglyphics were destroyed and supplanted by the old Egyptian gods. And even his son Tutankhamun took his name from the old gods that Akhenaten had tried to supplant with his belief in the one god Aten. So Rob C. Plexus started from the moment God said, "Let there be light." That's the real big thing. If that's what you want to believe, but no. Guapo says, in a street fight, I believe wrestling and boxing is superior, but to defend against weapons, my experience of Ruger is superior to all fighting styles. I'm not. Oh, you're trying to tempt me to go into martial arts? No. Well, there's tactical firearm training, Eric, and if you ever do tactical firearm training, you know that a gun a gun by itself isn't self-defense. You still have to learn hand-to-hand training. When you learn tactical firearm training, you learn that to use a gun in a self-defense capacity means usually you're within a confined space. And in a confined space, you have to learn hand-to-hand combat. That is why even in the 21st century military, we still learn hand-to-hand combat. Like the army, he has developed its own self-defense system called Army Combatives, which is based on the which is kind of based on the system that the Marines had formerly made, which is called McMaps. I think I'm saying that's right, MCMAPS, the McMaps. And it was a Marine who who had joined Army Special Forces, and then later developed a system for Army Combatives. But in any case, all the different military branches, despite having being trained in the best weaponry out there, still have to get hand-to-hand combat training because in a confined space, you still need to learn how to use strikes and kicks and throws and takedowns and all that sort of stuff and submissions, and You're not going to get away from that. Simply saying, simply have saying I'm gonna have a gun and that's going to be my self defense isn't going to work, because all you're doing is basically giving your enemy a gun. If you don't know how to do hand to hand combat, based in a self defense capacity, a gun will just be a liability, and it doesn't matter which sort of firearm pistol we're talking about. Ask any person who's a licensed tactical firearm instructor. More than likely, you're going to end up doing something close to wrestling. And as far as a street fight, um, like I said, I think BJJ you can handle yourself pretty well. But like I said, you're going to be at a disadvantage if there's multiple attackers or weapons, because BJJ itself, unless you go to someone who's actually adapted it for street defense, won't teach you how to deal with someone with weapons. And that's most likely going to occur when you're talking about inner city crime. Most people aren't going to attack you unless they think they have some edge on you in some way, which is either a weapon or having buddies. But off of martial arts, we're going to save that for another day. Joel May says, quick, Beetlejuice, Invader Zim, or Hellboy? It's for a project. I don't know who Invader Zim is. I know who Beetlejuice is. I know who Hellboy is, but you gotta give me some sort of clue. Are you asking me who's my favorite between the three? Because I need a little. I don't want to, like, if it's going to mess up like the purposes of the project. Um, I don't want to do that, but I need a little bit more information to go on to before I choose which of the three. Because like I said, I don't even know who Invader Zim is. Again, I'm Gen X. I'm not a gamer, so if that's a character from a game, I'm not sure who it is. I know comic books and I know Beetlejuice. Elevator said, "What's good, big dog? Looking good, my man. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it." Kunta Kinte. So you mean you talking about the actor um damn, what's his name? He's on my Twitter feed. Really good dude. Um, they also did Reading Rainbow and Geordie LaForge on Star Trek Next Generation. Mr. Contreras says, sorry, hello, sorry, I'm late. It's no biggie. Thank you for helping me out. Please give me a reminder in like say like 30 minutes to end this, because I don't want to go over like I did yesterday, please. The science that we know came from Egyptian religion. No, it didn't. The science that we know today comes from people like Galileo. He's considered the father of modern science, and he actually died for his beliefs. So, um, on his deathbed, they I think they asked him that he want to recant his beliefs, and in Latin he said, allegedly, you know, in his deathbed, his last thing he said is, "And yet it moves," which he was talking about the celestial bodies, because through his experiments, he discovered the what's now called the moons of Jupiter, or the Galilean moons. he he gave us modern physics. He, along with people like Newton and Descartes, so much so that Rene Descartes and Galileo Galilei are the two guys who are credited with the overthrow of Aristotelianism, which the church embraced for like 1,000 years. Egypt did not give us modern science. They took advantage of things like geometry and stuff like that, of course, but Aristotle gave us the ancient classifications of science that we know today, to like such as biology, chemistry, physics, and all that. He gave us those different divisions of science, and it was the pre-Socratic philosophers, the first known philosophers coming out of ancient ancient Greece, the Ionian philosophers, who put us on a pathway to science and to all of Western civilization. Egypt didn't do that for us. Elevated says all the chemicals in the water turning the frogs gay and stuff is crazy. Well, I remember hearing about that a long time ago. I forgot what that was about. Kind of reminds me of like how the Simpsons, because when that was like something from a long time ago. 'Cause I remember that's why the Simpsons always had the three-eyed fish to talk about like how chemicals were poisoning our water streams and mutating animals that came out of that whole joke back then. Sal Pal says true. Jitla says a lot of atheists are gay. I'm not, bro. Um, and there's no connection between sexual orientation and how people identify. So that's if you attempt to shame people who are atheists by calling them gay, first of all, grow up. Like that eighth grade shit doesn't work here. Go to fuck somewhere else. And then like if at least and if you're gonna try to crack jokes, at least make them good. Like I said, I'm from the let me reiterate this. I am from the 80s guy. I am Generation X. We crack jokes as a pastime. We whether you called it playing the dozens, joning, cracking, busting, snapping, we did it all. We held contests to see who was the better at insulting each other. So for you little young motherfuckers trying to make jokes, make it good because we've heard them all. I can insult your mother in 1,000 different ways. So yeah. Anyway, so Eric says there are some overlap with some societies, but there are major differences between them. One major difference is the Christian worldview, where everyone is made in God's image and has innate value. No, there's not. So let me. I get what you're saying, but first of all, that's not true because there's about 1,000 different Christian doctrines. So which one are we talking about? One of the problems with holding any religious doctrine true is that to hold one religious doctrine true, you have to hold the other ones false, and then it just becomes purely subjective which one you hold true. Are you going to hold the Catholic doctrine as the true faith? And if so, which version of Catholicism? Because you can break that down too. Um, or maybe Eastern Orthodox. And which version of Eastern Orthodox are we talking about? Or maybe neither Catholic nor Orthodox, maybe Coptic. Which Coptic? Or are we gonna go with with someone else? Are we gonna go Lutheran? Are we gonna go Anglican? Are we gonna go Methodist? Are we gonna go Baptist? Are we gonna go Apostolic? Like we can keep going. Like which like there's no one Christian worldview because it breaks down based on the different doctrines. And there's about, like I said, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different Christian doctrines out there. So which there's no unified Christian worldview. They don't all even agree on what Jesus is. The Coptic church doesn't see him as divine. The Coptic church thinks he was a mortal man. Then there's the Unitarian church. They're almost as close to being atheists to be a church. Um, then you have others like the Mormons who think Jesus came to the New World and that the Native Americans were the lost tribes of Israel, and that the Indian genocide was because they rejected God, according to Joseph Smith. So there's no one unified Christian worldview other than the one you've already subjectively chosen to be the worldview. And they definitely don't think that everyone has innate value because it's been the Christians who've made war on the world across the planet up until modern time. Well, up until the last 100 years ago. It was Christians going around invading every facet of the earth. Muslims did their big share of that too throughout Africa and the Middle East and Asia. But to get back to Christians, what part of innate value did these Spanish conquistadors who came right along with their Spanish priests to the New World? What version of innate value did they have for these indigenous people that they encountered? So anyway, and I'm not meaning to be insulting. I'm just saying I'm trying to challenge that because, like I said, I think so many Christians don't realize that there's so many different doctrines out there just within Christianity itself that you know it would be overwhelming to try to get some sort of overall like worldview that they all agree on, and it's because I mean there's I don't want to be facetious. There of course there's some overlapping views like the belief in Jesus and stuff like that, but even amongst them there's no agreement because like I said the Coptic Church doesn't doesn't agree that Jesus was divine. They see him as mortal, and the Coptic Church is older than the Catholic Church, right? So Göbekli Tepe is even older than Egypt. I think you're talking about the um, Turkish temple or whatever they found some time ago, and it was published in National Geographic and some other places. And it's evident they had some kind of religious beliefs based off the carvings of that site. Right. So if you're talking about the Turkish site that they found, the Göbekli Tepe, I think they found this this the site that could be almost 8,000, like maybe up to like 10,000 or so years old. So I'm familiar with what you're talking about. But as far as civilization in the sense that we mean it today, then I'm still going to have to say Samaria. Göbekli Tepe is evidence that um, ancient humans were already holding religious belief. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier, saying that there was religiosity has always been a part of the human experience. But as I also said in my live stream yesterday, as long as it has been organized religion, there has always been religious non-belief as well. And like I said, even when you look into the Old Testament, you see there were people who were, if not atheists, they definitely disbelieved in the beliefs of the time and were often called things like Epicureans, which is a certain philosophy that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with atheism, but they tended to be these hedonistic people that rejected um, um, organized religion and other things in search of pleasure and the immediacy of now. um, sure, Vendetta. She's actually moderating the chat, so you're lucky she didn't kick you out. I'm sure my girl is cheating on me with you. 20 to 25 minutes till midnight. Yeah, I'm gonna give this like another 5 minutes, guys. So I want to go eat and do some other things. Um, wait. So Eric says most Christian sects have this in common: Jesus died for everyone, and that act gave them innate value. It didn't give them value. What it did was it gave them. I know what you're trying to say. It gave it. It he's his sacrifice led to them all being able to be rewarded with eternal life. His sacrifice saved everyone from eternal damnation, which is why he had to go literally down to hell to save the ancient prophets because they came before he existed. So he had to literally go into the depths of hell to retrieve the ancient prophets to bring them to heaven. But Whatever. Anyway, so Aquafunk says, I grew up in a church, and every time a new pastor came, everyone had to believe new stuff. Damn. Really? That's that's crazy. And I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, see, when I haven't gone to church since I was like, well, I mean, I've been to church, but I mean, I haven't regularly attended church since I think I was 15. Once I was old enough to make my own mind up, I'd stop going because I never liked going anyway. Like, black churches were so boring, except for Sunday school. Sunday school was cool, but once Sunday school ended and you had to go back to the regular service, it just sucked. And then before that, my my mom and I were Muslim, but I was so young back then that I really don't remember anything that happened there. I just remember playing with kids, and that's it. I don't remember anything about being Muslim because I was so little. I just remember like when we went to Christian church, and I just remember it being very, very boring. And I remember the preacher, especially at these Baptist churches, were very theatrical, but I don't really remember most of the contents of the sermons other than they just, even as a kid, it just seemed like theatrics to me. It didn't seem like something to take at face value. But again, that's because I was always skeptical even as a little kid. London says hello. What's up, London? Eric says it takes time for these ideas to um, manifest in society as well. Look at the Western world view on slavery compared to the rest of the world. The British Empire outlawing slavery was based on the Christian worldview of everyone has innate value. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. First of all, slavery was practiced everywhere on Earth. It was the United States was the first one to outlaw it, as far as I know. And slavery still happens to this day in many of the places where blacks were taken from. So, and I'm not gonna go into that because Dennis Sperling, the attorney, he has his own podcast. He's already done an excellent job of fleshing that out. But slavery still exists today. um, it exists. Slavery existed in every human civilization. It was Western society that stopped it, and it had nothing to do with Christianity. It had to do with us looking back at some of the things that we were taught back in the foundation of Western civilization. Because when the age of enlight when the European Enlightenment and the age of reason came about, and people started looking at these old things that we have forgot about thousands of years ago, realized that we already had arguments against things like slavery and torture and other things. Anyway, if Christians were the main benefactors of slavery, so it was not because they held people in innate value. That's far from true. Where was the innate value they had for the indigenous people? Where was the innate value they held for the Africans they bought and sold? Where the innate value they have for the folks in the Far East? And I can keep going. There was no invade. Their innate value was only on themselves, not on the people who they felt was outside of them, outside of their group, which is leads back to in-group bias, which I mentioned also yesterday in the chat. Yeah, there's always been tribalism, and religion has often spread tribalism, not curtailed it. Aquafunk says, hit the top three dots on the right hand of your screen to yag that like button, please and thank you. Yes, sir. So I warned Vendetta, and the wife timed him out because no one has time for trolls. Like I said, trolls are either children who shouldn't be on these platforms with adults, or they're people with neckbeards in their basement who probably should be on a watch list somewhere. Alcafun says no, like every pastor has slightly different interpretation of the Bible, but no one said a word. They just changed their views like it was cool. It depends on how. drastic to change. Like if you just if you just I don't know. I mean every because like every pastor is going to run the church a little bit differently, right? So I understand that, but I mean if they came in with like a whole different doctrine, then that's something different, right? And it's always going to be a bit of interpretation when it comes to the Bible because most of it is poetry and homilies and is steeped in languages that we no longer speak, like Aramaic and Greek and Latin and Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, and then is translated into a more arcane form of English that people don't speak anymore, which is Shakespearean English or Elizabethan English. Like a lot of those things are lost in translation. So, for instance, like when people talk about Noah and stuff like that, and they get that whole thing that happened to Noah incorrectly, like when it says that Ham was the son, the son of Noah, Ham was cursed by his father because when he came upon him, he saw the nakedness of his father, um, and people didn't understand what that actually meant. That came from that actually comes from some old saying from either like ancient Hebrew or Aramaic at the time, which meant to see the nakedness of your father or someone meant that you slept with one of his wives. That's why he was cursed. It wasn't because he was black and so or whatever. He was he was cursed for seeing the nakedness of his father, which meant he slept with one of his father's wives. That's why he was cursed. But you're not going to get that unless you know biblical poetry and know how to interpret those arcane sayings. And that's why every pastor or who comes up may have different interpretations of different parts of the Bible because they were taught it differently depending on where they received their education or they went to seminary school or whatever. Eric, you're not going to win this argument, buddy. You said the British Empire outlawed slavery and cited biblical texts as they did it. Eventually, the same sentiment spread to the U.S. Many of the abolitionists were devout Christians, and many of the Spanish conquistadors that murdered Indians and raped them were devout Christians too. Christopher Columbus was a devout Christian. Hernan Cortez was a devout Christian. Ferdinand de Soto was a devout Christian. Like it has nothing to do with their religious beliefs. It's the type of person they were. You can use religion as a tool that can be used for good or for ill. Christianity had nothing to do with the British Empire outlawing slavery because if that was the case, they would have outlawed it a long time ago when they first became devout Christians during the Middle Ages. So that doesn't make sense. So if for over 1,000 years they were Christian, they suddenly had an epiphany. Hey, we're Christian. We should stop doing slavery. But sir, we've been Christians for thousands of years. Oh, never mind that. That doesn't make that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks guys for subbing, liking, all of that stuff. Um, like I said, we can go on this forever, but the wife did give me the warning to end this because I told her to let me know because I don't want to go late into the night like I did yesterday. Um, we can hold another discussion on this. I also did promise someone yesterday that I would do a live stream on military stuff as far as what's the best branch and about people giving their information about their military experiences and stuff like that. But we can do another stream on this because trust me, we can talk about religion till we're blue in the face. But one thing I will say is I don't want to tell anybody to give up. If you are of if you are of devout faith then stick with that. What I did want to say, I never got into it from the beginning of the stream. I might have to do it in another stream. Was I did want to proffer an argument for atheism, but I didn't get to do it this time around. So I might have to do that at another time. I'd rather just read people's comments and respond back. And to your credit, Eric, I won't say Christianity had nothing to do with it. I'm just saying it wasn't the only reason. Because like I said, if it was through divine inspiration, it should have happened much earlier, is what I'm saying. That and like I said, often Christianity was actually used to oppress and exploit people. And but on the other hand, you have found Christian people who have used their faith for good things, like Martin Luther King. So that's where we'll leave it, guys. And you guys can keep commenting because once I post this, you can leave comments. I'll still respond to the comments after the stream has ended. All right. Thanks, Andrew, for chiming in, guy. I'm sorry this is about to end when you came in on the stream, but you once I post it, you can check out the beginning of it, or you can check out my other streams, my YouTube shorts, my videos. I've made many videos talking about atheism and skepticism, and my stream yesterday was all about like philosophical questions, which actually led to me making this stream today. Thanks, Eric. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Appreciate it.